In this video, I'm giving you 7 tips on dealing with stress as a student in school. I'm doing this because I did a video on 5 tips on stress and I realized the audio quality was really bad outside because of the wind. So here's me making up for that. Let's just get started. Some of these tips will be fresh ones that you haven't heard even if you watched the first one. And I know a lot of people are stressed at school, so hopefully these will help. Tip number 1 is about being fine with the worst case outcome. I think one way, and there's many different ways people successfully deal with stress in school that I've noticed, but for me, one thing that I always saw was I was okay with the worst case outcome. It ultimately ends up popping up in your mind at some point if you think about it, and usually that's not getting good grades. And I had to be content with that outcome and the consequences. Sometimes those consequences just means you just don't feel as good about it. Other times it means your parents are upset. You have to be okay with that. Regardless of how they react, you're not going to die. Life is going to move on. In fact, a lot of B students end up earning more money later on in life. So I know how stressful it is because, I took a lot of advanced placement classes. And, there's even the times where other stressed students would, not maliciously, but they would poke at my stress. I remember one time a guy, he was like, "Oh my gosh, did you miss the assignment? Did you miss it?" And he built this whole thing up for 10 minutes trying to stress me out, only to tell me, "Oh, there was no assignment." He meant it as a joke, but it didn't rub me the right way. Fortunately, I was okay with the worst case outcome, and it didn't stress me as much as he hoped. Tip number 2. Music. Now, simple but super effective. There's a reason why music is one of the most profitable industries. It's why it's birthed so many celebrities. Music is a universal language, and choosing soothing music, whether that's classical or certain kind of lo-fi songs. Personally, one of my favorites is "Put Your Records On" by Corinne Bailey. I think her last name is Corinne Ray Bailey. That's a great song. Really helps ease the tensions, especially those with lyrics that just kind of remind you about what really matters in life, whether that's family or just the simple things. Tip number 3. By the way, a lot of these tips do not just come from my own opinion and experiences. As I've mentioned, I'm a big personal development nerd, so I've read a lot of books that mention stress reduction. There's even a couple courses I've taken on stress reduction. Tip number 3 is about realizing that the future is positive. Optimistic people are statistically not just happier, but they deal with stress better because they know that this too will pass and better times are ahead. You may not think so, but there are opportunities that come from maybe bad situations or tough things. Even if it seems like, man, I got to deal with this bully or this person in school that's really rubbing me the wrong way. It may seem like that's going to last forever, but it's not. The future is bright. You're going to switch classes one day. You're going to switch rooms. That can only hold you back so much. Even when you go home, that's time away from this person who may not be helping you out. I remember one time there was this kid in school who was just always bored. He had ADHD or something. He did horrible in school, so he would just take it out by bothering me, annoying me, and I would miss a lot of words that the teacher said. Ultimately, he basically flunked out and requested the transfer. So then, I was happy again. And that leads me to tip number 4, which is sometimes you need to be proactive. Sometimes it's okay to be proactive, to let the teacher know. If I had to go back, there are definitely moments in middle school and high school where I could have definitely expedited a process. I could have gone to the teacher after class. No one would have known. And I would have just said, "Hey, don't tell them that I said this because I don't want to get in trouble from them. But they're really harassing me, or they're really, stressing me out and not letting me hear what you have to say." The teacher would have acknowledged that for sure and then reshuffled seats as they typically do every quarter and so forth. So that's another thing that could be very helpful. You can be proactive and find ways of dealing with what's causing the stress, the core of the stress. Sometimes it's talking out with this person. Other times, whether it's family, sometimes you can't really just make them disappear. So, you can try and, find some compromise that at least for the few years you're with them before you go to college or whatever, you deal with that situation in the most harmonious way possible. Yeah, simple as that. Tip number 5. Realize that reframing your perspective can make a lot of difference. I've seen this firsthand. I've seen others do this really well. It's not a cure-all, but it can really do wonders. There's people who hate their jobs. There's people who hate going to school. But if you refrain from, oh, I have to go to school, I hate it too. I get to go to my job to put money on the table, to pay for my insurance, to put food on the table, to stay alive in this economy. All of a sudden you start to look at things in a new perspective. You start to feel grateful, and you get a new wind. You can even reframe school to just like this thing you have to do to, hey, this is setting me up for some higher purpose, whether that's one day helping the world, one day through a nonprofit, or something else like setting me up to get a good job, to raise a good family. Whatever that purpose you define, it can really reframe how you look at school, which gives you a much more positive attitude. Tip number 6, talking about reframing and positive attitudes. Gratitude is another great reframe. It's not just a reframe though, it's a constant habit and practice that you should put into your routine. Studies have shown that just doing a gratitude exercise once a week, no more than that, can have noticeable effects on your general happiness. On top of that, it really kind of hones in on things that really can, completely change your attitude towards life, especially when you do certain exercises to really learn about other people, other walks of life, other countries out there where, they're having a much harder time. Maybe they don't have civil rights. Maybe they don't have clean water. Maybe they don't even have the opportunity to be educated. And no matter how hard they try, the best they can do is, make minimal wage in that town or city because it's a developing country. There's a lot of reframes that you can use to really realize, wow, here I am complaining about school and, these French fries that are really horrible in the cafeteria when there are people starving out there who don't have civil rights, who may have to deal with sex trafficking or whatever else. So there's that. Tip number 7. This video is getting long, so I got to get concise. The last tip I have for you is, realize that there's no cure-all. Stress is not something that you can just magically use these tips and fix, but you can start to work through it. I heard the saying, don't try to manage stress. You're not trying to manage this. It's more about living life and not even dealing with stress, but, realizing, you don't need to deal with stress. You can make the choice to an extent to just get rid of this. In primal times, stress was often triggered by something that was life-threatening, like some beast attacking them and while you're out hunting. Now it's caused by things that at worst will not kill you. Like even if you lose a job and you feel like you're unemployable, chances are there's someone who will hire you. Even if it's a McDonald's, like there's thousands of McDonald's out there. Not all of them are going to communicate with each other. Even if you screwed up at one, as long as you have that growth mindset, you learn from your mistakes and improve, you can find that other place. Even, at least in the U.S., homeless people don't really starve. There hasn't been a starvation case in a while. I haven't heard it in the news. So, at worst, you're not going to die. And so oftentimes the stress you're feeling is oftentimes primal and more so than the cause warrants. So, to some extent, I think you can rationalize away, okay, when you really crystallize why it's stressing you, you might be like, okay, not a big deal. I can deal with this, or at least it'll drop a little bit. So there's what I got for you. Again, I've been there. I've been stressed as well. It's not a, I've used all these tips and it's not gonna solve everything, but it will help you out. It will do more than someone who's just kind of unaware and unconscious, or and not consciously really taking certain exercises, and you'll do better than them. Subscribe, like, comment.